guys, this is Claudia here from the Bookkeeping Experts. I'm back for more. This is the video you all been waiting for. This is the third and last video on QuickBooks Online Cleanup for Business. All right, so we are so excited to talk to you about the importance of cleaning up your books and getting everything in order, your financials in order. Not only to file your taxes and save money in taxes, because if you stay up to date, you're able to adjust a few things and save money in tax plan. Do some strategic strategic planning so you can save it on taxes. But not just that. The most important, as I always talk to you, is just the ability to understand where you stand, where you are, and where you want to be as well. So there's no way for you to set goals if you don't know where you are. So you need to know exactly where you are so that you can aim those goals into the right target. All right, so without much further ado, we're gonna go straight into QuickBooks Online. And here we go. All right, here's Craig's design landscaping. Today, we're gonna talk about how to look into the financials and find any remaining errors. So we first talk about the workflow of the cleanup, right? So first you want to categorize all transactions. Second, you want to make sure that your chart of accounts is organized correctly, and we taught you how to clean up, how to eliminate duplication, and how to categorize everything correctly. So then we talk about reconciling all your bank accounts, your credit card accounts, and your bank accounts. And then we also talk about how to enter cash transactions, and how to add your assets in your liability accounts, and how to reconcile them as well. Okay, so now third part, we're gonna look into the reports and verify if there is anything remaining that needs to be done. Okay, so we usually start with the profit and loss, and then we go to the balance sheet. The profit and loss is how you're doing for the current year. So it's showing you all your income and expenses for the current year. A few things you need to look into. For income transactions, you want to look at negative amounts, except for this discount given, because the discount given should be negative because it's taking away from your sales. So with that being said, it's okay to be negative. It's supposed to be negative because it's obviously you're giving that discount to your client, so you're removing that from your gross sales. Other things to be looking into is negative amount in the expense account, because those are actually income transactions. So you want to make sure that there is no negative account in the expense account. If there is one, most of the time it's errors, but there could be maybe an expense that happened on the prior year, and then maybe a refund that happened on the current year. If that's the case, then it's okay. If not, then you need to look into it and correct, because if it is income that is miscategorized as expense, you want to make sure you go into that income transaction and categorize it accordingly. And by the way, in order to correct that, you can actually click on the amount, not the highlighted one, but the sub accounts, and it will open up all transactions related to that categorization. So you can change it right from here. So you can click on the number and it's going to open up the transaction, and you would be able to change it from here if you need to change it. So if you're changing the categorization for pest control, maybe one of the service, you just can click on the arrow and select the right service. And make sure when you change the service, it will change the amount of the invoice here. So you want to make sure you write it back up if it does delete it, if it does change it. We're going to get out without changing, but this is how you go. So you can, especially if you see that something doesn't sound good, it's maybe too high, you or you're looking into maybe some expenses that doesn't seem to have all the transactions that are supposed to be there. You want to be able to click on it and take a look what is missing. And sometimes you can look, like if it is an expense that happen every month and you see that a certain month is missing, you can actually go into the bank transactions and look for that specific transaction and see how it was categorized, because sometimes it's just miscategorized. So when you go into banking, you can click on transaction and bank transaction. You want to click on categorize, and you want to take a look maybe at a specific date. So let's suppose you're looking into just October transactions, so you can put October, just the dates that you're looking, and apply. Of course, this is a sample account. There's not going to be anything here, but anything you add from here is going to show over there. So I'm going to just add a couple of things so that you can see what happens. So we are adding those transactions into the books. Once I add here, it goes to categorize. See that? So there was nothing there. Now there is something in there because we just added. Okay, so that's how you fix it. You can actually fix it from here as well. Besides the profit and loss, you can, if you find the transaction that is miscategorized for the specific month or day, you can click on the blue link here, and it will open up the transaction. It's a hyperlink, so it's opening up the transaction, and you can make any modification right from here. Okay, so isn't that great? All right. So, and of course, this is matching with a transaction with an expense, so it's gonna give you the detail for that expense. So that's great. So let's go back into the reports. So profit and loss, the main thing you want to look at is the amounts, right? You want to verify that your total income uh, is correct. If there is anything that looks off, a few things you can look into is duplication on your income, especially if you use app transaction and you're not matching anything, you're duplicating everything, and you see that your sales is so high, you want to look into that, right? And of course, when you reconcile the account, you can catch those duplications. But sometimes if you record those transactions into a cash account or an incorrect bank account, then you won't be able to see it unless you go into the chart of accounts and locate that bank account that is incorrect, that is recording transactions incorrectly. So yes, you want to take a look at the income, the cost of goods sold, and then look at your final number and compare to everything else. Now, this is just to verify if there is an error. However, the profit and loss is a very important report, and you should be using it all the time in order to track your sales and track your progress towards your financial goals. Right? So it is a very important report. Okay, so one way for you to analyze or use the profit and loss to analyze your business is using the profit and loss by percentage of total income, which is going to give you your total income by percentage. Okay, and here the total income actually doesn't show up until here. See, all this is sub accounts, and then you're gonna have your direct cost right followed, which is your cost of goods sold. Then you're gonna have your gross profit. Gross profit basically is your profit before your operations expenses, and then right after that is your just regular operations expenses that are not direct cost. All right, so this is the profit and loss, and this is how you fix it if there is anything left to be fixed after you categorize and you reconcile and you eliminated duplication in the chart of accounts. And then finally, you want to take a look at the balance sheet. Now, the balance sheet, you definitely have to take time here because everything needs to be, obviously, everything needs to be accurate and all the financials. But here, you can find a lot of errors. Okay, the first thing you want to do is to make sure that your bank accounts are balances are the same as your bank statements. Because if it's not, then there's something wrong. There could be like the reconciliation was not done correctly, and you may have some duplication of income or duplication of expense. So you want to take a look at that and make sure that it's eliminated and corrected. Or maybe there is some missing transaction on your cash account, so you want to make sure you enter all those expenses as well that you paid with personal funds, and we talked about that on the last video. Okay, take a look at your accounts receivable and make sure that the accounts receivable are for balances that are still open, because if there is an invoice that has not been marked as paid even though it has been paid, you want to make sure you correct that and match it accordingly. If it happened on the past, then you can eliminate those accounts receivable or invoices if you already paid taxes, close the books for the prior period, and so on and so forth. So you want to take a look at that. So very important. Inventory is another one that you want to make sure is up to date. And a lot of times with the inventory asset, you may need to do some journal entries to adjust that. Okay, now undeposited funds. Remember, undeposited funds, it's so important to keep it clear. Undeposited funds are payments that have been recorded as paid but has not been deposited and matched in the bank yet. So you record it as paid, but sometimes it hasn't cleared the bank, or a lot of times if this number is too high here, it's really something you need to clean up, because you have all these transactions that could have been duplicated. Maybe you already accepted as sales, but the payment is already recorded and is sitting on undeposited funds, but has never been recorded as deposited and never matched in banking. A lot of times this happened because the amount that cleared the bank is different from the amount of the payment that you recorded, maybe because the invoice had a different amount. Before you record the payment, make sure you make those adjustments, and then you record the payment for whatever amount that actually cleared the bank. That's very important. If not, that's very easy to get duplicated transactions and have these undeposited funds sitting in there, and you're paying more taxes than you're supposed to. Not good. Okay, so now after that you have the assets. So for the first part is your bank accounts, which your asset account, accounts receivable, and then your other assets come right after that, such as vehicle, any short-term or long-term fixed asset, and so on and so forth. Right after the assets, such as building, truck, and so on and so forth, you have your liability accounts. And that's another one you want to pay attention. And those accounts need to be reconciled as well. One of them is the accounts payable. Make sure the same way that accounts receivable needs to be matched in banking. If you're entering bills in QuickBooks, you want to make sure that you match those bill payments. You want to make sure that you record the payments to the bills and match them in banking, and make sure that those amounts are matching exactly what happened in the bank. If there was any discount or anything like that, you want to be able to record that before you record the payment. I just want to show you. Plus new bill, and then after you enter the bill, you want to make the payments, and the payments to the bill you want to record for the date that actually happened. A lot of the errors here that happen is because the date is incorrect, or the payment was recorded for a different amount, and so on and so forth, which prevents it from matching in banking. All right, so take a look at if you want to take a look at what's in there, you can just click on the gray area, not the highlighted, and it will open up all the transactions, all the accounts payable that are pending. Those are your bills that has not been paid yet. So actually shows everything, all the ones that have been paid and the ones that have not been paid as well. All right, so then you have your credit card accounts liability. That's your the short-term liabilities, and those accounts need to be reconciled. And you want to make sure that there is nothing left, and the balance at the end is the same balance as you see it in your credit card statement. All right. After that is you do need to reconcile. If you have QuickBooks payroll, you're gonna have your liability accounts here, your short term accounts or payroll liability, and each one of those accounts will need to be reconciled to make sure that it's matching. And we have a video on that, just how to reconcile payroll with QuickBooks and also with other payroll services. Now, with other payroll services, you shouldn't see anything here in liability except for maybe a retirement plan or health insurance that you pay with another company. And then at the end of the day, once you pay that, you need to remove it from liability. Okay, we have the rest of your liability accounts, maybe notes payable or your bank loans or your mortgage and so on and so forth. All right, so the final accounts are your equity accounts. It's very important to go into the equity accounts, and the opening balance equity should be zero because most of those balances on the opening balance, uh, sometimes it can be owner's investment, and that needs to be categorized accordingly. So it should be a zero balance here. You can do it with the journal entry to clear, or you can click on the gray area and it's going to open up all the transactions and see which ones are miscategorized. Okay, so here you should also see your owner's distribution and your owner's contribution. And I always like to take a look at all the owner's distribution and contribution to verify if there is any expense there that actually should have been expense but ended up being recorded as owner's distribution. Okay, and finally you have your net income, which represents what the number that we looked into the profit and loss, means all your income minus your expense, your net income for the year, and the total equity. All right, okay, so like I said, very important to look at some key accounts here, but within the balance sheet, pretty much everything is key information. These bank accounts, all your accounts receivable, inventory, your asset accounts, your liability accounts need to be reconciled to make sure that they represent what actually is going on with your finances. Okay. All right. So this is how you do the final check. Now, there's one more thing you can do to make sure that everything is up to date and to locate those errors that maybe was not located when you reconcile the account. You want to take a look at transactions and chart of accounts. Okay, go to the chart of accounts. Oh, my word, there it is. and take a look at the balances in QuickBooks versus bank balance, and you can view register. And if your account has been reconciled, let's say up to December 2020, 2022, you want to make sure that you verify that there is no transaction here that has not been reconciled before the date of the reconciliation. So let's say here on the reconciliation status, you want to click on the arrow and verify if there is anything that is not reconciled, and you don't put anything on the front date, but you want to add the date of the last reconciliation. Let's suppose that this was reconciled in September, and it wasn't because this is a sample account. I want to apply here and verify if there is transaction. There should be no transaction if I had reconciled up to the date and I put the correct date in there. So it should be nothing. If there is anything, well, keep in mind this account has not been reconciled. But if there is anything, you should be looking into those transactions and see if they were miscategorized, a lot of things that I see is that a lot of my customers will record those transactions into the checking account, but they never deposit that money into the checking account, or maybe an expense that happened with a personal credit card. So you want to change that. You want to make sure you put that on the right credit card. So to change it, you would click on the transaction, edit, and modify the bank account. That is, maybe it was paid with a credit card instead, or maybe it was your cash account or a clearance account. Then you want to make sure you change that to whatever account actually happened. Let's suppose it was in savings instead of checking, and then you're gonna save and close. Okay, after you changing the bank account, and it's gonna take out of this register because now is no longer registered as been paid from this checking account. All right, so this is one important check to make sure that your checking account was properly reconciled, because reconciliation is very important, because that's where you may catch some discrepancies such as duplication on your income or expenses from transactions that have not been properly matched in banking. All right, so that's it. That is it. There's so much more that we would like you to watch, and some of them we're gonna add to our course of cleanup. So if you do want to purchase the course, we're gonna be coming up with that cleanup for business owners by next month or so, somewhere around there. We're gonna add a few more things on a little bit more detail on cleaning up your uncategorized transactions. We do have videos on that as well. We have a lot of videos out there that can be useful cleaning up besides this one, but what I wanted to do is just to create that workflow for you so that you know exactly the things you need to look for when you're cleaning up your books. Okay, so one more thing that is very important, now I'm gonna get back here, is to make sure you add the vendors. Add the vendors to each expense and income, expense transaction, and the customers to your income transactions. Because if there is any question, you can always go into the transaction and make sure that everything is correct. The vendors, adding the vendors is actually very important, because maybe a transaction has been miscategorized. So if you see the name of the vendor, you will know in the future that that transaction had been categorized one way and maybe should have been categorized else in another way. Okay, and but you wouldn't be able to find that if you don't put the vendors. Same thing with the customer. Maybe you miscategorize something, or maybe you want to track a customer, how much that customer is bringing as far as income goes. So very important to put your customers and your vendors on each of the transactions that you enter into QuickBooks Online. All right. I hope that this video was useful to you, and that I was able to help you get your books up to date until before the end of the year, where you should be able to maybe hopefully evaluate where you are, and if there's anything you can do, maybe increase your contributions, or maybe adding your vehicles and so on and so forth. Please keep in mind, this is not a tax advice. You should contact your CPA for any tax advice. This is just your workflow with QuickBooks and how to enter and how to clean up, so that you can get ready for the end of the year, and not just that, being able to be in charge of your business and take it to the next level. Thanks for watching and spending this time with me. If you like this content, please share with the world, with all your friends, co-workers. Share with the world, and subscribe to our channel. We always come back with more information and more tutorials, free information on how to work on QuickBooks Online and keep your books up to date. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week, but until next time, keep on smiling.